This is one of those cases where you point to it and go, there's definitely some kind of cover up going on here. For some reason, somebody did not want him talking about this case. And you got to wonder why. It began one night in 1964. 11-year-old Mary R. lived with her parents on a farm on the outskirts of a suburb of Oklahoma City. Their nearest neighbor was 2.5 miles to the east. Like most other families in the area, their lives were fairly mundane, uneventful. That all changed that night in 1964. Mary's parents were quite upset with her, possibly over some unfinished chores, and an argument broke out. The reason for the disagreement was never disclosed, only that it got very heated, and at some point Mary stormed out of the house into the darkness. Mary's mother was going to chase after her, but her father insisted that she not bother, that they needed to let Mary blow off some steam. Mary's mother felt things might have gotten out of hand, and so she decided to ignore her husband and go after her. Before Mary's mother had reached the back door, she heard a high-pitched wail. It was Mary. She was screaming in pain. She dashed out onto the porch just in time to see something that she described as a, quote, round glowing object, sort of like a flying ashtray, moving away from the house. Mary was laying on the ground about 30 feet from the house. There was the sickening, acrid stench of burnt flesh in the air. She quickly ran to her daughter's side. Mary, what happened? What did that thing do to you?" Mary could not answer. Her mouth could no longer fashion words. She was simply in too much pain. Mrs. R. gently lifted her daughter into her arms, walked quickly back to the farmhouse, and telephoned the local police and ambulance. And this is when things took a strange turn. Although Mrs. R. had called the local police, it was an Oklahoma City patrol car that answered her distress call. The private ambulance that picked up the child did not make emergency calls outside of Midwest City, but the crew did make the trip out to the farm on that particular night. 2 hours later, Mary was transferred from Midwest City Hospital to Tinker Air Force Base Hospital, even though under government rules no member of the family was eligible for such hospitalization. 2 days after the incident, 3 people reported that all of the personal belongings of the R family were packed into 2 large blue vans, which they described as being, quote, Air Force blue colored. The neighbors had witnessed these vans parked out in front of the home for hours as people moved items from the house into them. And that was it. The R family were gone. Nobody heard anything again for months. UFO researcher Robert A. Stiff of Oklahoma City had gotten word of the encounter and the strange vanishing of the family, and he began asking around. He was able to find a contact who had access to the records of the United States Air Force for 1 month after the incident. Although Stiff was unable to develop concrete proof, his contact told him that it seemed certain the R family and their personal belongings had been whisked away to Washington, D.C. What really piqued his interest is when he talked to the nurse who had been working in the emergency room that evening. Oh yes, that was the little girl with the burns. That was an odd case, you know, because we get burns in quite often. But she was really burned bad. When Stiff asked what was so odd about her particular burns, the nurse replied, "Not the burns so much as the fact that 75% of her body was affected, but her clothes were not even singed." In the 1960s, Robert A. Stiff, or Bob Stiff as he was known to his friends, worked as a director at the ufological magazine known as Saucer Scoop, which was published out of Florida. Remember, this was a time before the internet, so magazines were pretty much the easiest way for independent researchers to disseminate information and turn a small profit, which was then used to fund their work. Stiff was an academic and a medical professional, along with his wife, who was fascinated with the topic of UFOs, though he remained neutral on the topic, neither a hard believer nor non-believer. He began contributing to the International Dateline on a monthly basis. Utilizing 28 foreign correspondents, he was able to report on cases from around the world and in North America. He had gotten word of the Mary R. case from a local contact. He did not disclose if it was from one of the neighbors, the police force, or somebody in the intelligence community, only that he heard about it and it deeply interested him. A little girl is burned by a UFO. A few days later, her entire family moves away. It certainly felt like a cover-up to him, and he began to pursue it more vigorously. Things would change, however, when it became clear to Robert that he was being targeted by somebody with a lot of information. It began with a phone call. On the evening of February 7, 1967, Robert's phone rang. The voice on the other end of the line was a male, and in every subsequent call made after that night, it was always the same person. These calls, all but 2 of which came at 7 p.m., would continue to come in, sometimes days or weeks apart. There were 13 in total, all of them strange and disturbing. Since most of the calls were very short, Robert was able to transcribe them from memory. First call, February 7, 1967. The voice. I would suggest you drop your investigations into certain so-called UFO reports. Stiff noted a hint of mockery. Stiff answered, Who is this? The voice. That doesn't matter, but do as I say for your own good. Second call, February 23, 1967. The voice. Mr. Stiff? Mrs. Stiff answered the phone. Just a moment, please. Stiff. This is Mr. Stiff. The voice. You haven't heeded my advice, Mr. Stiff. The information you have gathered concerning certain UFO reports is now useless to you. I would suggest you delve into other subjects and leave the UFO reports alone. Third call, April 7, 1967. The voice. Mr. Stiff? Stiff. Before you start, I think I should tell you that this type of nonsense doesn't bother me in the least. If you get enjoyment from this, you're sick. The voice. I'm far from sick, Mr. Stiff, and I don't enjoy having to do this. But we don't feel it in our best interest to have you continue. If you do, we have many means of stopping you. Stiff, such as Martian death rays, or do you base your calls on Flash Gordon? I don't feel it possible that you actually think I believe all this stuff. The voice. If you don't now, you soon will. I don't know of Mr. Gordon, but I can assure you we have methods other than death rays, as you call them. Fourth call, April 28, 1967. The voice. Mr. Stiff? Stiff. Speaking. The voice. Stop now, or I must do it for you. Fifth call, May 8, 1967. The voice. Mr. Stiff? Stiff. What now? The voice. Did you find what I said about the uselessness of certain UFO information sheets to be true? Stiff. Yes, to some degree. The voice. I'm sure it's more useless than you care to admit. Stiff. I'm very busy, so please stop calling me, or I'm going to have these calls traced. The voice. That cannot be done. Stiff. What can't be done? Stopping the calls or having them traced? The voice. Both. I shall continue to urge you to stop your hopeless investigations, and the latter threat of having these communications traced cannot be accomplished. Sixth call, May 12, 1967. The voice. Mr. Stiff? Stiff. Speaking. The voice. The information concerning the burn case you have gathered will be of no help to you now. How much proof do you require before you believe this is no game? Stiff. I want to tell you something, whoever you are. The voice interrupting him. At least you didn't say, whatever you are. Laugh. Stiff. I'm not frightened by this nonsense you continue to pursue. If you were what you pretend to be, I feel you would have other means of communication other than a telephone. The voice. Mr. Stiff, you assume too much. Have I ever said who I am or pretended to be other than a voice of advice? Stiff. You insinuate who you are, and I'm in no mood to believe it for 1 minute. The voice. Regardless of your mood, I'm here. Seventh call, May 26, 1967. The voice. Mr. Stiff? Stiff. What new advice do we have tonight? The voice. Your sense of humor may not last long, Mr. Stiff. How is your mail coming these days? Stiff. What do you mean? The voice. Has it not fallen off a bit? Stiff. No. The voice. I feel you're not being honest, Mr. Stiff. Your correspondence from your representatives and other nations has been less of late, correct? Stiff. I hope you know that's a federal offense, tampering with the mails. The voice, laughing. I thought you said it hadn't changed. Stiff. What is the purpose behind this charade? You must know I don't believe it. The voice. Again, Mr. Stiff, I fear you are not being honest. Stiff. In what way? The voice. You are believing more and more. Stiff. I fear you are mistaken, not me. The voice. Have it your way, Mr. Stiff, but we both know. Eighth call, June 9, 1967. The voice. Mr. Stiff? Stiff. Yes. The voice. You are planning a publication, I understand. Stiff. That's right. The voice. Don't. Ninth call, June 23rd, 1967. The voice. Mr. Stiff? Stiff. Speaking. The voice. Do you still want more proof? Stiff. What do you mean? The voice. How is your publication developing? Stiff. Fine. The voice, laughing. Come now, isn't that an overstatement? Stiff. I said it was fine. I just haven't had time lately to work on it. The voice. I understand you have had trouble with your printer and in obtaining certain mailing permits. Stiff. Your information is incorrect. The voice. I don't think so. 10th call, June 3rd, 1967. The voice. Mr. Stiff? Stiff. Do me one favor before you start. Tell me who you are, or who it is you are supposed to represent. There would be no way for me to prove this if you did tell me, and perhaps I might believe some of what you say. The voice. Does it matter who I am or who I represent? Stiff. Yes, it does. The voice. Let us just say I am a voice and represent those that do not wish you to continue in your present pursuits. Stiff. That tells me nothing. The voice. Perhaps more than you realize. Stiff. Maybe so, but why me, assuming that you are who you say you are? The voice, interrupting. I never said who I was. Stiff. All right, assuming you are who you seem to be. The voice. The assumptions are entirely your own, Mr. Stiff. Stiff. Possibly, but anyway, why me? Why this silly method? The voice. I think you have found this method to be as effective as any, haven't you? You dropped certain investigations because you could gather no more information, and you are not going to publish a magazine now, correct? Stiff. But not because of you. The voice. Really? Stiff. You've still not answered me. The voice. You are delving now where you shouldn't. Stiff. For example? The voice. I'm not a fool, Mr. Stiff. Stiff. I know you're speaking of the case concerning the little girl and the Tulsa photograph, which was another case he was working on at the time. The voice. Again, these are your assumptions. Stiff. Possibly, but just what do you want me to do? The voice. Don't continue in your present investigations. Stiff. And if I do? Which I will? The voice. You will be stopped. In a June 1967 issue of Saucer Scoop, it was announced that a U.S. senator had agreed to assist the magazine in finding out what happened to the R family. The article read, "A U.S. Senator, Mike Maroney, has authored the release of UFO files regarding a UFO sighting with injury, as reported in the previous issue of Scoop's International Dateline column." Tinker Air Force Base officials have admitted that they do have a file on this case, but refuse to release it without orders from the Pentagon. This last statement seems strange considering the fact that the United States Air Force has repeatedly disavowed the claims of ufologists that such cases have been hushed up and that any orders at all came from the Pentagon. The senator heads a powerful Senate committee, and he has said the release order came from the Pentagon. Senator Elmer Stilwell Mike Mulroney was an Oklahoma senator from 1951 to 1969. Married into the wealthy Mellon banking empire, Mulroney had immense power and even played a pivotal role in the creation of the World Bank's International Development Association, or IDA. Robert Stiff, along with the magazine editor Joan Whritenour, were actually starting to believe that they might get some answers as to what happened to young Mary and her family, and if some kind of cover-up was indeed at play. Add to that, Stiff had been asked by a local television station in Oklahoma to appear on their show to discuss the topic of UFOs. He had asked if he could discuss the Mary R. case in particular, and the producers agreed. Stiff was elated. The case was finally going to receive the attention it deserved. The mysterious voice had warned him to stop, but Stiff had ignored him, and now it seemed that he might have made the right choice. Stiff sensed that he was finally at the cusp of solving the mystery that had dogged him for so many years. Prior to appearing on the television show, Robert Stiff was informed by the producers that if he even hinted at the Mary R. case, the show would be canceled. Not just his appearance, but the entire show. Ultimately, Stiff had to agree to not mention it. He was there simply to discuss the topic and nothing else. The Mary R. case was off limits. It was a gut punch to the researcher. In private, before the taping, the director pulled Stiff aside and informed him that he had been ordered by the station manager to not include any mention of the little girl, and it was serious. No reason was given, and the director admitted that he was just as puzzled. Following this, Stiff got more bad news. Senator Mulroney rescinded his offer to help, offering no explanation as to why, and even stopped responding to his inquiries. Add to this, Tinker Air Force Base decided that they could not release the files on the case after all. Stiff had been chatting with an officer at Tinker for several weeks. Suddenly, that officer would no longer accept calls from him. No reason was given. Once, when Stiff called the base and was told that the officer was not in, he called back 10 minutes later, used a false name, asked to speak to the officer, and was immediately connected. When the officer learned who it was, he hung up. It was clear the fix was in. Stiff's troubles only increased. Some of the witnesses began changing their stories. What blue vans? I didn't see any blue vans. In July, Stiff suffered a medical emergency. He had to be hospitalized when a blood clot was discovered in his leg. Upon release, he was given doctor's orders to minimize his activity for at least a month. While at home recuperating, he received a letter from Joan Whritenour, the editor of Saucer Scoop magazine, his boss. She had written to him to inform him that they were canceling the International Dateline column, and that his services would no longer be needed at the publication. The letter read, "Bob, just a short note to inform you that your services are no longer required with Saucer Scoop. You are no longer a director and your articles are not needed any longer. Please do not write anymore because I will not answer." In spite of the fact that the letter bore a St. Petersburg, Florida postmark, Stiff recognized it as an obvious forgery. "If Joan ever wanted to fire me, she would blister my ears. She surely wouldn't send such a formal little ditty as this. A quick call to Joan after reading the letter confirmed his suspicions. He had not been fired, and she had no idea about the letter. "11th call, July 12, 1967. The voice, Mr. Stiff? Stiff, speaking. The voice, you were wise to do as we ask. Stiff, what do you mean? The voice, dropping certain investigations. Stiff, I haven't dropped them. I've just started others more recent until I can get more information on the previous ones. The voice, there will be no more information to be had, Mr. Stiff. With the call starting back up again, Stiff decided to finally tell Whritenour about what was happening, the mysterious strange calls. Up to that point, he had not spoken of it to another person. 12th call, August 1st, 1967. The voice, Mr. Stiff? Stiff, speaking. The voice, it was not wise to transmit the knowledge of these calls to others. Stiff, what do you mean? The voice, when you realize you're not dealing with fools, we have stopped you many times and you know it. Now you have told others of our talks. Stiff, they don't believe them any more than I do. The voice, you believe in it more than you care to admit. Stiff, you seem to think you know more about what I believe than I do. Then, the voice, you are saying actions speak louder than words? On August 4th, Stiff received a letter which had been postmarked Oklahoma City, August 3rd, 1967. The letter read, Mr. Stiff, I know what is happening to you. Please believe me, you cannot beat them. Do as they say for your own good. Signed, a friend. Unlike the calls, the letter was not so much threatening as it was a plea for him to take the matter seriously, that he was dealing with something that he did not understand. Around this time, Stiff began developing a comparison theory, which he never really discussed, only that it had to do with how anomalous events align with historical places. 13th call, August 18, 1967. The last call. The voice, Mr. Stiff? Mrs. Stiff, just a moment please, I'll see if he is in. The voice, he is. Stiff, hello? The voice, your comparison theory is interesting, Mr. Stiff. Stiff, how did you find out about that? The voice, you see, we do have means. Stiff, well, several people know about it. The voice, only 3 people know about your work. Stiff, that's right, those 3 and you. The voice, laughing. You must think that one over. Stiff, what did you want? The voice, to tell you that we are not pleased with the research you have been doing. Stiff, such as? The voice, I have no time for games, Mr. Stiff. Just know we shall always be informed about what you are doing, and that you cannot win. On September 2nd, 1967, Stiff found a letter in his mailbox, which bore neither a stamp nor postmark. It read, Mr. Stiff, stop now, or they will act. Please believe me, they will do it. Signed, a friend. After that, the calls and letters stopped. In September 1966, while still working as an editor for Saucer Scoop, Stiff agreed to work as a contributor for Hayden C. Hughes's new UFO magazine, which he was going to be titling the International UFO Report. Curiously, nothing came of it. Despite trying to get it off the ground, by late 1967, the International UFO Report never published an issue. It seems the voice directly referenced this in one of the calls. In 1968, Stiff agreed to assist in yet another magazine called the UFO Analysis Report, but it also fell through after only 9 months. At Saucer Scoop, Stiff found that many of his contacts were drying up, also referenced by the voice in one of the calls. On November 19, 1968, Stiff spoke on the phone with one Captain Robert Lofton of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Lofton had been assisting Stiff with a Tulsa UFO photograph case, and the two spoke often. 2 days after that call, Stiff got word that Lofton had passed away from a heart attack. Apparently it was so sudden that Lofton was gone before they could wheel him into the hospital. Stiff was shocked at the news. In April 1969, Robert Stiff published his last piece for Saucer Scoop. The very next issue, his name had been removed from the magazine, and there was no mention of his departure, despite having been with the publication since its inception, back in 1966. Following this, Stiff seemed to step away from UFO research. In June 1975, researcher Thomas Stone decided to release a Best of Saucer Scoop issue, pulling together the best and most intriguing stories from the magazine. Robert Stiff was asked to contribute to it, and he did. Blistering rant aimed at the Air Force, bureaucrats, Senator Mike Mulroney, and even other investigators whom he felt were trying to cash in on the UFO craze. Stiff had come away from the experience a much more cynical person. He was uncertain of who was behind the cover-up, only that there was a cover-up. He experienced it. It was real. Afterwards, he began to look at the UFO topic with a more serious eye. He believed that they were real. He believed that the visitors, whoever they are, wherever they come from, had sinister intentions. UFOs are not here to show us the way or to be our guiding space spirit, as some researchers contend, but to make our planet theirs. Melodramatic? Maybe. But I might suggest you check and see how many cases are reported that suggest outright hostility and attack by UFOs. How many others that report friendly contact? You will find that the former outweighs the latter by a large margin. We are not alone, and the only agonizing aspect of this mystery will be to determine how much longer it will be before they let us know. In 1975, Brad Steiger and Joan Whritenour, using material that she had obtained from Stiff during their Saucer Scoop days, would publish the new UFO breakthrough. In it, they laid out in detail the Mary R. case and the insurmountable wall of silence and strangeness that confronted Robert Stiff when he tried to look into it. Of course, this was many years after Stiff had walked away from ufology, and so no real follow-up was conducted by him or any other researcher. What happened to Mary R. and her family remains a mystery, one that will likely never be solved. And she never even made it to the door, and boom, she hears this horrible scream. So it made me wonder if, maybe this kid had, accidentally, walked into it or ran into it. But then later on in the story, there's some mention of Martian rays, and there's no reason for Stiff to mention that. And I wondered if, behind the scenes, he had heard that maybe this girl had said that she had gotten, zapped with some kind of a ray from this object. That's the only thing that kind of, because I didn't really understand why he said that in the call. But I guess if you know, if he knew about some detail about the case, he just didn't publish it, but he knew some detail, and he was sharing it with this person that he assumed must also know that detail, and that would make sense in that context why he said that about these Martian rays. He kept trying to suss out whether or not this guy was, some kind of government agent, if this was some kind of intelligence operation, or if he was what he thought he might be, which was an extraterrestrial that he was talking to on the phone that was warning him to back off this case. Why anyone would want to spend this much time and effort getting a reporter to kind of stop talking about the case is beyond me. I don't know what if it was some kind of a botched test craft, and this military was trying to cover it up. Kind of would make sense. I assume that they had bugged his phones, and that's how they kind of knew what was going on. And I thought the letters and the phone calls were sort of because the letters took on a more lighter tone, so I thought maybe the letters were kind of like, the good cop, and the phone calls were sort of the bad cop, and they were trying everything to get him to stop talking about what happened. And gradually over time he came to, it seemed like he came to understand that they were kind of probably not someone you wanted to mess with.